least it's not much of one.
Well, I think in accounting terms, that's a slide.
We have 1 cent less
That's
than.
a polite way of saying it.
Yeah.
Busy. I think that's right now. I had to close it. I was in a hurry. I was trying to scarf down some food in the car.
Good, you?
Are you a relation of Michael King? I have no relations at all. Last a while. Most people are pretty happy about that. It is now 6 o'clock, but with your indulgence, I'm going to give it a couple of more minutes. We have a couple of members who struggle to get here that come from across the county. Just a couple more minutes.
If you could turn on the microphone, if you stick it pretty far in front of you, it's directional, so it should pick up.
Okay. It's now 6 o'clock, and with your indulgence and permission, I would like to give us a few more minutes and let a couple of our members who have to run from Wilson County to get here on time, just give them just 1 or 2 minutes and see if they show. We have a quorum, so we can start. I'd just like to do it in the courtesy of giving them a minute.
And I would ask if anybody's gonna talk, if you could try to use the microphone, that way the online can hear you. And if you're in the gallery and you want to talk, if you can just wave your hand and I'll put the microphone on that stand right there so you can speak.
Just for everyone's information, this particular meeting had not been properly advertised as a Zoom link in advance publicly like we're supposed to do. That's on me. I'm still learning the ropes on that with our mandate from the state. So any board members that are attending on Zoom may observe only, they may not participate or vote. But in the next meeting that we call, it is already set up. So if someone chooses or cannot attend and they want to attend by Zoom, they can participate as a board member if you're on the board. Okay, let's go ahead and get started at 6:02. I'm sure we'll have 1 or 2 that will roll in the midst. We have a quorum. We have 4 out of 7 here, so the meeting is now called to order. If you would, let's stand and face the flag and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
For information, Mr. Chairman, I will let you know Mr. Page is attending. She's on
Oh, she is. Okay, terrific. Welcome, Heather. Okay, first thing on the agenda is we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was January 21st, 2021. They were distributed to you via email in advance, but you also have a printed copy. If there's any adjustments, corrections, or amendments to those minutes from the previous meeting, let's hear that now. And if not, we will entertain a motion to accept.
Motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Mr. Graves makes a motion to accept.
I prepared them. I don't know whether I should.
Second.
Ms. Leah Verbal Petty has given a second. If there's any discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The minutes are accepted as presented. Next thing is the treasurer's report prepared by Mr. Thurman. It's pretty simple. You have it in your packet. There's no change. We have a balance of, it's 1 penny off. You made a mistake by accident. 115,55546. That's 115,555.45.
It's 45 is correct.
So your printed report is 1 penny off. There's been no activity in the last month. Next on your agenda, number 6, we are discussing the Anderson Meat Processing Center. There was a sewer line connection settlement looking for authorization of $1,200 for his connection. If you'll look in your packet in the back, you'll see an email chain. And you'll also see a copy of the updated receipt. It appears that it fulfills the wishes of the board from the last meeting with a formal rejection of the previous offer of $960 for our records. So he was rejecting that amount and he was requesting $1,200. The next requirement or request for the board is that we had a receipt with more specificity on the charges, and he has provided that. It appears to me to be in order. It is up to the board to discuss. If you have questions, I'll try to answer. If there are no questions and this appears to be in order to you, I would entertain a motion for authorization to make payment in the amount of $1,200 to Mr. Steve Anderson.
I just had.
Just a motion to pay the $1,200 per the invoice.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Graves. We have a second by Mr. Thurman. Any discussion? Any questions?
I just wanted to confirm that Mr. Thurman did approve that it would be acceptable, but by his second motion, I understand it probably is.
I'm sorry, Ms. Baker. I'm sorry, Ms. Baker. Can you repeat that? You're on a little speaker through my Surface Pro, so they couldn't hear you.
Just wanted to confirm that Mr. Thurman was comfortable with the presentation that was presented, and for his second motion, I take that is that a confirmation? Thank you, sir.
He is shaking his head to the affirmative. And I'm sorry, Heather, you did not get a copy of this. I'll be happy to email it to you when we leave here. Copy of the receipt that Mr. Anderson provided with the specific charges, as well as the email chain that was requested for rejection of the previous offer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Graves, a second by Mr. Thurman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed. We will make, Mr. Thurman, if you will make that payment. And if you need anything from me further, please let me know. Next thing on the agenda, number 7. We have a formal formal request for access to grant funds for the Anderson sewer line expenses. In your agenda, I had put aside Mr. Lyons from Tennessee Central Economic Authority, but Mr. Lyons and Mr. Titcomb could not be here tonight. What we are doing is Mr. Dan Tipton had made it aware to us that there is a fund, a grant fund that is set aside that Tennessee Central manages and stewards on our behalf. And there has to be an approval process through the board. But if we give authorization tonight, the mayor may request that we have reimbursement on some of the charges or some of the expenses that we incurred through that land sale. If you will look in your package, you should have a paper that says Anderson Meat Expenses. Mr. Thurman prepared this. The total is $5,176.05. It is possible that, did you make it? Does everybody else have that?
I do.
It is possible that if we make this formal request, what we would be doing is asking the mayor and authorizing the mayor to make this request on our behalf. It's possible that we could get reimbursed for all of those extraneous expenses that were incurred during that land sale and subsequently the sewer connection. The grant is sort of set aside for that. Did you get one? I'm sorry, you have to share. I didn't print that off. I'm sorry. But what this may do is reimburse the IDB for these $5,100 of our expenses. So I would entertain a motion, if it's the will of the board, to ask our mayor to make such request at Tennessee Central and fill out the grant forms. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer to the best of my knowledge. The mayor may be able to be more educated on this than I am. What's the will of the body? Yes, sir.
They have money set aside for this type of thing,
Yes, sir.
but we have to ask for it.
Yes.
And the mayor sits on that board, so it would make sense for him to be the one to present it to them, I would think. And then that
An IDB representative of the IDB would need to be there to present it. I can go over and give my support to it, but IDB, since it request comes from the IDB, usually the JCDB or whatever has a representative there to go over the grant and answer any questions.
I will attend that meeting and on our behalf and make the formal request. The mayor will work with us on making sure that we have all our ducks in a row for that proper request. But yes, you're right. The money is sitting in an account. It's earmarked for our use. These expenses, I briefly went over them with Mr. Lyons on the phone the other day, and it was his opinion that they all fell within the purview or in the regulations that would allow us to be reimbursed for these expenses. You didn't see anything, Mr. Gross.
So what we're asking here is that for the mayor to apply for the grant through Tennessee Central?
The mayor to assist us in the grant process for Tennessee Central to reimburse the IDB for those expenses listed.
Well, I make a motion that we ask the mayor to ask for the grant money for this report.
I second that.
Ms. Leah, Verbal, do you prefer Petty or Verbal?
Petty.
Petty, Ms. Petty, seconds. Do we have any other questions or discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is so carried. Next thing on our agenda is number 8. We're going to discuss the pilot program preparations. There are grants, and Mr. Lyons was once again not able to attend. The mayor may be able to help us with this. There's once again another grant program that could very possibly assist us with some of the expenses in setting up and implementing a pilot program in the future. Now, this is in its infancy. We're still learning a lot, and I've dove off into it head first, and I'm starting to get my mind wrapped around how it works. But what we would be doing is once again asking the mayor's assistance in this going forward. Now, I don't think we're there yet, but wanting to discuss it. We also, your next agenda under that is the approval to engage a firm called Younger and Associates are out of Jackson, Tennessee, and they're specialists in these pilot programs. They help us evaluate the program. They set up an economic model based on our community, and they help us with that. And these fees that we would be paying to Younger for these pilot program evaluations, it is possible that we would get some reimbursement on those fees from the grant that we're discussing. Mayor, do you have something to add that might be a little better than I can?
No, I talked to Dan Kickham after the Younger Associates did their presentation, and he kind of voiced the same thing. There is grant money. There's actually 2 different grants that Tennessee Central has. One of them is called the Select Tennessee Grant. I discussed that with Mr. King. I'm gonna have to correct myself. It was actually set aside to give money to communities that were trying to submit a site through the ECD's Select Tennessee Site Certification Program. We're not going to have anything to submit to that. We have no more industrial park left. It's all at PowerCom. So Mr. Wines is looking into the possibility of rolling that into some other new kind of grant. The second one is just a Tennessee Central Economic Development Grant. That money gets $20,000 every year put into it once they receive their TVA payment or the tax money. Right now, the Trousdale County has roughly $92,000 in that fund. We can use it for different purposes as long as it is industrial development related, and seeing how this would be used by Tennessee Central to do recruiting to the PowerCom side and other responses to requests for information. They feel that this expense doing this pilot study would be a valid or eligible expense, so that we may be able to use as grant monies. It's the same grant monies that you're going to use to try to get the reimbursement for the sewer line at Anderson Meat Processing. So their initial thought is they thought it would be eligible. Now, of course, this has to go to the board and be voted on, but I will let everyone know here, as long as I've been on that board, and I was on it when we initially set these grant funds up, I have never seen any request be denied as long as it came through the formal process. And like I said, I've never seen them deny it once. Usually how this would go is Charlie would get up, talk about this, the grant application itself. They would have, in other communities, it's the Joint Economic Community Development Board, where we're metropolitan. We don't have that. We just use the IDB. Then they would refer it to that representative, either from the JCDB or IDB, would get up and just generally talk about their grant application. And then usually they defer after that to the mayor from whatever county it is that submitted that. The mayor gets up and voices his support. And usually there's not really any questions that come up, and it's pretty formal that it's going to be approved for the most part. Like I said, I've never seen a single application denied. So I feel real good that these are going to be eligible expenses based on what the Tennessee Central staff has told me. And I can answer any further questions if anyone has them.
Just for the benefit of recapping and hopefully summarizing that in a layman's term or simpler fashion for me, if a company per se comes in and wants to put an industrial or manufacturing business in our community, they can request a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. And basically what that does is it gives the IDB the ability to negotiate a better tax base on the property prior to its improvement. So let's say if we're going there and build a $100 million factory that's going to improve that property and that's going to make the property taxes skyrocket pretty quickly. We can all the way from a complete abatement to a percentage up to 14 years or even longer sometimes, but we can negotiate a way to stall those taxes or reduce those taxes for a period of time, which is beneficial for the company. It's very enticing to lure them into our community that might increase our tax revenues, our sales tax, our jobs, everything else. This is a very commonly thing done, especially in larger cities like Nashville and Knoxville and Memphis or something, where they get a lot of manufacturing business. Now, we don't get a lot of that here, but we're hoping to. Now, the hope is that this has never been done before. The board has never set this up before. We've never had this request, because we've never been ready for it. We're trying to prepare ourselves in advance for the possible or impending request that we may get at some point in time. Now, the advantage to that is if a company, it's looking like real estate is these days. If you're looking for a house and you're on the internet, you're going to spend about 3 seconds looking at it. And if it doesn't hit all the right markers, you're going to move to the next one. If our community is not prepared or willing to give a pilot program, these manufacturing businesses are likely to swipe right by and go to the next community, which could penalize our community in growth and jobs and taxes in the long term. So what we're attempting to do is get educated on this, because it's a complex monster, and be prepared and do the groundwork so that if a company is interested in moving here, then we can say, yes, we have a pilot program. We've done the legwork. We have an application that Ms. Bay had helped us craft, and we've done some legwork. We're ready for you. We want you. We want your community, your jobs for our community. So that's what this is all about. Now, the grant is entirely possible that these expenses would be reimbursable to the IDB board. So it's not, we have to pay it, but we might get it back. So that's the hope, is that these expenses that we're spending to do the groundwork, we might get some of that back, if not maybe all of it. Now, we sat through a Zoom meeting a week or two ago with Younger Associates, these experts, and they gave us a very nice presentation on how they offer our services. And in your package, you'll see another sheet with Younger. You should, if I distributed it properly, and it gives a breakdown of their fees. Basically, what it is when we start our very first pilot program request, when we start, it's going to be $1,500 to get them to set up an economic model for our community. It's an economic model. What this does is it's the jumping off point. It's their preparation and groundwork. Then what they have to do, and it depends on whether this is in 6 months or in 2 years, they have to purchase these multiplier models to help them calculate the benefit to our community for this particular company. And we use this very complex matrix and evaluation to determine what's the benefit to our community in the long term, and how can we effectively negotiate a pilot program so that the company would be interested in moving here. At the same time, we don't want to give away any more taxes than we have to, because that defeats the purpose of having a company come in. So it's a balancing act, and we just, quite frankly, it's too complex for us to figure out. We're going to need an expert to help us evaluate that. Younger is the obvious choice. They're recommended by Tennessee Central, and they've had a lot of experience with them and highly recommend them. I've had some conversations with them. So what we're doing tonight on number 8 is discussing the preparations, but under number 9, I had on the agenda a formal approval to engage Younger for the future pilot evaluations and base model. Now, I had a conversation with Ms. Lana, I can't remember her last name, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but earlier today, and she clarified some of this. We do not have to pay them the $1,500 now. We can wait until we have a request, and that request may come next month, or it may come in 2 years. The advantage is if we pay them now, they get that economic model done in advance, and it saves time. And that is going to be a very good thing for the company to see, because they're going to be in a hurry. They're always in a hurry. What that time period is, Mr. Graves and I discussed it earlier, and he asked a very good question, is how much time does it save us? I do not have an answer on that. I don't know if it saves us a month or 6 months. I have no idea if we engage early. My gut feeling is that engaging early is the right step, but I'm going to get an answer to that question, and I would like to circle back and revisit this at the next meeting where I have a little more information for you that, yes, this is a good thing, and this will save us 2 months or 3 months' time if we engage in advance rather than waiting until we get a request. I also feel like if we already engage with them in advance, we have an economic model and we can better advertise to these companies that, yes, we've done our groundwork, we have an application, we're ready to go. If you're ready to move to Trousdale County, we're ready to talk to you about coming here and starting a pilot program. I don't know if any of that makes sense, if I explain it properly or not. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Chris.
So if we were to engage Younger and Associates, excuse me, for the $1,500 to get the basic model built, then every opportunity that came to us would then have to be customized to that opportunity, I would think. Is there an additional charge for that? And if so, what is the charge schedule look
The
like?
$1,500 is a first-time, one-time fee. It's your base model. That base model pretty much doesn't change within reason after several years. Now, the multipliers are like a house appraisal. They have a shelf life. So you can't purchase those now because if we don't get a request for 9 months, they're going to be out of date and we have to pay for them again. But the base model is basically sort of like a retainer for a law firm. We're getting on their books. They're getting all the groundwork done in advance. Does that answer?
It does, but once we engage a potential entity that wants to come to our community, there are other charges then to build that specific model
Yes.
for that potential opportunity. And my question was, what does the fee schedule look like for that?
As I was instructed, and please correct me if you understand something differently, but the way that I was told and the way I understood it, I had a conversation with the representative this morning, is that is an hourly rate. You'll see on this schedule, research is $150 an hour. A research assistant is $75. General administrative technical support is $50 an hour. The multipliers are a couple to $300 a piece. I don't know how many you have to have. I think it depends on the scale of the project. But they said that just a rule of thumb, it probably is going to be anywhere from $750 to an evaluation, or it could be $5,000 or $10,000, but it's going to depend on the scale of business that's coming in. So if you have a company that comes in, it's going to bring 20 jobs, it's not going to be a lot of money. If GM comes in and wants to bring 500 jobs, it's going to be a lot of money. So it's a sliding scale based on the extent of the work that they have to evaluate the size of the company and the benefit to Trousdale County if we allow them to come in.
Mr. Chairman, I can elaborate on something. I know one of the questions about whether it's better to kind of have it up front, and I'm going to kind of go over how some other communities have their pilot program or pilot application set up for information. And then I've got an actual email from ECD about a potential project they put out across the state. I'm going to use this as an example. Usually what you'll find in these pilot program applications or their information is there's an eligibility matrix in the back that really breaks down investment in the community and what's their capital investment, what's the labor cost going to be, what do they see as their pay for their employees. It's a very complicated matrix. That is sent out when they get a request for information. They send this out as a packet to any potential companies that's looking to locate. This particular one was sent out by ECD. It is called Project Willington. They sent this out on February 24th. You had to have your request for information response in by 5 p.m. on March 4th. That's why you want to go ahead and have this set up ahead of time, because they get this application packet and they use it to evaluate whether or not you're going to move into the next round of their consideration for where to locate. If you don't have some missing information, you go out right at the top of the pile and you're definitely not going to get a site visit. So it's better to have some kind of eligibility matrix up front so they can run their numbers and kind of see what would be benefit of locating to your community. Now, when they do want to locate there and they do file the pilot application, you have an application fee that is on a sliding scale for what they're going to want. So that's going to cover whatever the fee is to Younger Associates when you have the application fee. I think Knox County, I think their standard fee is $4,000 when they file a pilot application, but obviously, I don't think ours is gonna be 4,000. We're not looking for the level of company they are. So you can have it on a sliding scale, say, okay, they're gonna come in and invest $10 million and have 30 employees. Well, it may be, $2,000, let's say, just for an example, or it's something less than that. You can set up a sliding scale based on whatever their needs are, or what their information is. But usually what they do is they have that application fee up front to cover the eligibility evaluation that a company or a firm like Younger would do.
The way that sort of works in a very, very simplistic explanation is if a company comes in and they want to apply for a pilot program, then those fees, those application fees would and should cover the expenses for doing the evaluation from Younger Associates, and as well as other fees that would be into that. There's going to be some legal fees. There's going to be several extraneous fees that would be involved in that, and we would Younger would help us determine, I'm sure, how to evaluate what our application fee should be to cover that. In theory, this is not supposed to cost us any money out of our pocket. The company is supposed to pay these application fees for that. Now, what happens is if we accept their application and it's a very negotiable thing, and there's lots and lots and lots of variables that you can put into this, time and sliding scale and abatement percentages. But if you do this and you enter into it, then that company essentially transfers ownership of their property to the Industrial Development Board, and it's in our name during the term of the pilot. They pay us basically a lease payment to use the property, and that is the money that is passed through the IDB to the county commission, or to the county government, I'm sorry, for the taxes, payment in lieu of taxes. At the end of that term, it gets transferred back to the company that owns it. Well, that incurs several closing fees. There's going to be attorneys, attorneys and property documents. That also is calculated into those pilot expenses that the company has to pay. So in the long run, I don't think it'll really cost us any money out of our pocket in the end to do it as a board, but we may have to front some of it. Yes, Mr. Wood.
One other thing that Younger is doing is they're pulling the standards to know whether the information these industries have provided you is accurate or is in line with normal things in that industry. If they say we're going to have 40 people that we're going to pay $40 an hour, but that industry, the average pay is $15 an hour, they know that they're not being equitable with you. So that's part of what they're going to do, is they're going to look at the information that they've been provided to make sure that it's accurate or that it's based on reality.
And on the flip side of that coin, if they come in and say, we're going to put 100 jobs on at $15 an hour, but the national standard is $23 an hour, we know that they're coming in here and intending on underpaying our community, and that's not necessarily something we would like to see. We want to see our citizens get fair and equal pay for the right job that they're going to do, so we don't have somebody trying to take advantage of our population.
And that's part of the evaluation process.
It's a very complex monster that I don't think any of us could ever understand. So having an expert like Younger, and they come such highly recommended, I think is going to be a necessity.
For sure.
In that, I'd like to table that approval until the next meeting, and I'm going to get a little bit more information and try to learn a little more about it, so I can answer that question of how much farther ahead of the game do we get by engaging in advance, or should we just wait until we get a request? I feel like the various information is very accurate. We need to do this in advance. That being said, I would like to table that. Now, number 10 is a formal request for grant funds available through the pilot program that he spoke about earlier. That it's possible that we could get that $1,500 or portion back for the engagement or some of these expenses that we're spending to set up and be prepared for the pilot. There's some money out there that could be applicable for this type of thing. So I'd like to kick number 9 and number 10 to the next meeting until I can get that more information, if you would.
Well, then what about number 11? Does that not enter into it too?
Slightly different. Number 11, we are also going to need to engage an attorney that is an expert that would help us execute and administer the pilot program. The common choice that I'm told is Mr. Bob Rochelle of Rochelle McCullough Alts in Lebanon. He actually served with the state of Tennessee, I believe, and actually wrote some of the pilot programs and laws around that for Nashville. And he seems to be the obvious choice. So what I would need is would need authorization to engage Mr. Rochelle, go have a meeting with him and engage him and get him started so that he can be prepared to take us the next step. I'm sure there's going to be fees applied with that. I just can't tell you what those are. But I believe before I have a right to go on the behalf of the board, I need a motion to approve me to do so. But he is separate from Yoga. It's a separate entity.
Right.
They evaluate the matrix. He is going to administer the paperwork and take care of the county in such a way that we stay legally compliant.
Is that possibly refundable also?
It is possible.
Okay.
As I understand it, most of these expenses that we're going to incur, it is possible that we will be reimbursed for some or all of those. So if it would be the will of the board to authorize that, I will follow through with that and make an appointment with Mr. Rochelle at his convenience and try to have more information at the next meeting.
You're wanting just authorization to talk with him, discuss fees,
Right.
not to actually engage him.
No, but I feel like I need a motion because I'm sure he's going to have a consultation fee or something. So we may have to spend some money just to sit down with him.
Probably on initial, probably not.
I don't know. And personal law, maybe not, but on something this complex, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I've never been down this road before. So before I go obligating us to some sort of a fee, I'd like to have authorization from the board to do so if you so feel this is wise. I personally feel like this is a necessary step in our progress. We're going to have to do it at some point if we're going to do a pilot. We can either do it now and get ahead of the game, or we can do it later. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm trying to put it together in my mind what the benefit is of engaging the attorney before we engage Younger. Could you help me out on that a little bit?
I think once again, it gets him familiar with us. I don't know what kind of groundwork, I don't know what kind of information he's going to ask of us. We don't know. I just don't know how to answer those questions until I speak with him. It may be that it's nothing more than having a meeting and saying, we need you on retainer to be, or on the books to be our attorney of record. When this comes down the pike, I don't know. I can't answer it. Mayor, can you elaborate? Have you been through that at all?
Not for pilots. Mr. Rochelle is the attorney for Tennessee Central, so he's on a retainer there. And I'm not going to speak for Rochelle McCall at all, but my feeling is I don't know that they would charge you an initial consultation fee just to kind of see what you're thinking. So if it were me, what I would do is I would approve Mr. King to speak to Mr. McCall, Mr. Rochelle on that initial consultation. If there's not a fee, if there is a fee, then I would maybe address it at the next meeting. But since you're moving these other items to the next meeting, I would probably authorize you to speak to Mr. Rochelle, see what he says on that, and then come back to the next meeting when you're considering all together if you're going to move forward, and then vote then if you want to retain Mr. Rochelle, because he could probably give you some kind of idea of what fees are going to be. It may be just a fee for I'm going to do this and it's set amount, or it may be billed hourly. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. When you get into pilots, it's a very high level thing, and you're doing only just a few firms across the state that do that. So that's the way I would recommend doing it.
Well, it seems like instead of maybe engaging at this point, we need to be on a fact-finding mission to find out exactly what will actually happen or entail in this process. And then when you bring that information back, looks like that's when we would maybe make a decision about engaging somebody. And it may be clarified within 2 minutes of talking to him, of course.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, well, what I will do with the board's permission is I will reach out to Mr. Rochelle and try to get some more information. And if I can meet with him at no expense, I will. If not, I'm sure he'll swap an email with me or something, give me some idea. This, like the mayor said, this is such a complex animal and there's so few people that are experts. We don't have lots of choices. So there's not 10 people like Yoga to go shop their business, their rates or their services. There's just not very many. And as I understand, Mr. Rochelle is one of those rare experts as well. So I just don't think we have lots of people to go shop for services and prices. We're kind of locked in on who we're going to use. The good thing is that as I understand it, Mr. Rochelle is on retainer to Tennessee Central and serves with them quite often. So Dan Tinkham spoke very highly of him and endorsed his expertise and experience.
Mr. Rochelle's kind of specialty is government work, so that's kind of in his wheelhouse. And I will say, just as a board member, and I'll just say for another community, if another community came to me and needed this for their property, knowing that Tennessee Central works with them hand in hand to respond to these RFIs, and as a board member, I would vote to approve it, especially for a little as $1,500. We actually had the added benefit that Tennessee Central would like to have this just to specifically market their property. So that gives them another little benefit to get this in place. And I don't, with that on there, I don't really see any of the board members voting against it. As I said earlier, none of them have actually ever voted down anything that's been proposed to this point. So I don't see that being an issue. But you still need to know what those costs are. And if Mr. Rochelle can do it or not, he may say he's too busy and can't do it, or maybe somebody else in his firm can do it. I'm not sure if it'll be him specifically or if you're retaining the firm itself. I don't know on that. And if not, if he can't do it or his firm can't do it, they could probably give you names of other firms that can.
So if that sounds fair to the board, what I'll do is I'll reach out to Mr. Rochelle and try to get some more information and an idea about the fees, whether there's a consultation fee or not. And I'll try to come back at next month's meeting and give you some more information. Does that sound fair to everyone?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Number 12, would like to, the Industrial Development Board has a shallow and finite well of funds. These funds are not currently recharged on an annual basis. Since we are endeavoring with retail strategies and we have now committed ourselves to the contract of engagement with them, I don't want to wait to the last minute when our funds get critically low to start looking for money. We're going to have some more funds in our account to allow us to do and continue our good works for the community. So what we would like to do is ask or authorize for a request for funds from the county commission. Now, I had a meeting with the mayor and he gave me his very valuable advice on how to go about that. I want to make sure that we go about this in the right way. I've never done this before with the county commission, but we want to ask for some funds. We don't want to ask for too much. We want to ask for as much as we could possibly get to get by at this point. The money would probably need to be earmarked. We can't just say, hey, can you give us some money? And then we spend it how we want to. That money from the county commission should be earmarked specifically for retail strategies. So I would like to move that process along since budget time is coming up. With the board's approval tonight, the mayor can put us forth in the budget request. And at that point, I would need to go before the commission or committee and make a formal request for funds also. The figure that we've kind of come up with is about $10,000. Now, that doesn't mean we'll get it. We may get some, we may get none. It's up to the will of the commission or the committees. but we need to ask before we get anything.
How much did you say?
10,000. And I think that would help us tremendously if we could get that amount.
Hey, will that come through like nonprofits, or will it be?
I believe it would go into that donation one as a nonprofit, because it is technically, it's a municipality, but we can also donate to other municipalities or government organizations. So I think it would be in that donation line item.
If it's in that, would it have to be earmarked? That was my.
No, we're earmarking to make sure that everybody understands it is being given to the IDB to pay that specific expense. Just like when people donate to the animal shelter, they can say, I'm donating to the animal shelter to buy dog food. And then we can only use it for that expense. That was my suggestion, is that it be specifically earmarked for a specific expense. That way it can't be used for something else. I thought that would maybe allocate some figures about, well, what if they spend it on this or they spend it on that? But under the law, if it is given to them with a specific provision in mind, it has to be spent according to that.
Mr. Graves.
So I'm assuming this would go to Budget and Finance first and then to the full commission?
First, you would vote on it here, and then you're going to submit a formal request to the mayor's office. Under the charter, I have to submit that to the county commission. So I won't change it. I have to just transmit it directly as you've sent it to me, and then it'll go to the Budget and Finance at a budget hearing. And when we go through the budget, it'll be asked about there.
If we address it now, it would go as a formal request now to Budget and Finance Commission. If we put it in next budget, it would just be a part of the budget process, which we're starting that budget process now. So it only makes sense to put it in next year's budget instead, in my opinion.
It's our thought process that the Industrial Development Board is sort of taking a gamble on helping this community. We're not really sure that it would be wise to expect the county commission to get on board with that, since we haven't been able to get any results yet. So we want to be conservative in our request, so that hopefully as time goes on and we have some progress to report, then when we go back maybe next year, we might have a better chance at recovering some of these funds. So I will, unless there are more questions or clarification needed, I'll need a motion.
I would make the motion to authorize the chairman and mayor to request funds from the county commission for retail strategies in the amount of $10,000.
Have a motion by Mr. Graves.
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Thurman. Are there any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And so carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask when you transmit that to my office, if you could have a copy of the minutes, specific stating that request, and then if you have a letter on, I don't know if there's a letterhead for the IDB or not, I can't remember, but it's some kind of formal letter accompanied by the minutes from the meeting.
Very good. As soon as Ms. Petty gets those written up, if you'll send those to me, then I'll follow through with that. Thank you.
It's an excellent time to start this process.
I think so too. And I appreciate your advice on that. Thank you for your help. I've never gone through that process before, so a little bit murky for me. Next is number 13. We had discussed this last time, and I kind of hate that more of the members aren't here to discuss this. And if you guys feel like we need to keep this down until next month, we can. It's not vital that we discuss it, but one of the questions that came up is how to discuss the guidelines between industrial and retail help or assistance that we might help with. The Industrial Development Board by designation is for industry, but while our bylaws or charter rather is a little bit vague and murky, and I think it's designed so on purpose so it gives us some latitude, just like what we're doing with retail strategies, that we might could give some assistance to retail businesses in the community in the future. Now, we will not, as I understand it, be permitted to apply these pilot programs to retail businesses. Our laws are that it's industrial only. manufacturing and industrial only. So the say, for instance, if McDonald's comes in and they wants to ask the industrial development board for a pilot program, they're in the wrong place. We can't do that. They would probably have to go to economic development.
Mr. Chairman, I would look further into that, and some of our IDBs do retail. There's a big development, actually right outside of Bristol, right off the interstate. They built a big new thing that has Bass Pro Shops and all this stuff, and that was actually done through an IDB. And there is that new shopping center and everything off of Interstate Drive in Cookville, that was done through an IDB. That's a pilot. So I think just different ones are structured different ways. My initial reading of the bylaws, I don't think anything from the IDB prevents doing retail. I think it's written, as you said, very open way. And there's actually a specific provision in the Industrial Development Corporation Act that says it's supposed to be construed very liberally to give it very wide bounds. So it may do that. I'm not going to say just run right out and do it. It's something that needs to be carefully considered before you get into that arena. But I think that opportunity is there, and I believe Mr. Beller and I have spoken. He thinks the same thing. That's why you were able to do the retail strategies.
Thank you, Mayor. I stand corrected. I'm sorry, I was.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Mike,
Yes.
your threshold on your pilot is going to eliminate a lot of the small retail. It would have to be a major retail with a lot of jobs before we ever reach the threshold to qualify for the pilot. So I'm the mayor. I wouldn't rule it out. I just I think some people would be afraid of it being inundated with somebody wanting to start an ice cream shop, them and their husband, and they're never going to meet the threshold to even qualify. So I think the retail that would meet the threshold could be considered an industry, is what I'm trying to say.
And I think in that one, and that's why Lacey Beasley talked about if you're going to do a pilot for retail, wait a little bit further, because you got a different calculation that's going to go into retail than you do industrial, because now you've got sales tax generation and that kind of thing. But again, it may sound unfair, but somebody that's opened up a mom and pop is probably not going to qualify for it. But if you've got a big corporation company in that can tell you exactly how many people are probably going to come into this location, what's going to be the sales tax generation that year, and all that stuff, are probably going to have the capital investment and everything that would qualify. But that'll be a different, separate pilot that has to be constructed completely different than the industrial.
Very good. I would like to potentially just leave number 13 on the working agenda, because as we learn more, we all have a lot more to learn about the ins and outs of that. We can discuss this at greater length. And hopefully, I know Heather Bay had a lot of very good questions about this as well last time. So I would like to, with the board's permission, unless there's more questions or discussion, I'd like to kick number 13 down the next time also next meeting also.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'll just make a recommendation to the chair. If you go on, and I can send you a link to this, there, Dr. Bob Bell is formerly with Tennessee Tech. He's actually the chairman of the Cookville Industrial Development Board, and they operated and did that pilot in Cookville. I will send you his contact information if you want to reach out to him and kind of get more information on how they operated on that retail side. I did briefly speak to him, and it was mainly a project put together by the city of Cookville's Economic Development Department and then brought to the IDB. But there still is some way that he can tell you, okay, here's how the IDB operated in that retail space, and then maybe the rest of the board can kind of inform on what Dr. Bell said. Or I know Dr. Bell has been very active in economic development in the Upper Cullman area. He may be willing to either come to the board or do Zoom or give you a name of somebody who can come and kind of give more detail on how it's operated in that retail arena.
I think that would be excellent. I think we would all appreciate the education and as much information as we can. This board, as I understand it.
I'm sorry, I got one more thing, and I've also talked to Matt Von Loon, who came to the retail strategies presentation the other day from Greater National Regional Council, and they have offered to come and do some informational sessions with the IDB if you would like for that. So if you're interested in that, I can reach out to him and do I guess include you on an email chain and see if we can set up something for that.
Very good. That's excellent. This board, and I think we're more active in endeavoring new policies and programs than probably in the near past has. So we have a lot to learn. So it's okay with the board, I'd like to kick number 13 down and just keep it on the agenda for next month. And I'll reach out, we'll reach out to Mr. Bell and maybe we can get some more information and potentially we can get a speaker to help us understand more about our options.
Have we had anyone to apply for assistance?
We have a retailer who is potentially coming into the community, and in fact, he's here tonight. I'm going to introduce him here in a little while. Who has indicated that he might submit an application for assistance in the future. I think he's still early in the process, but he's here tonight. I'm going to introduce him so he can get up and tell you a little bit about what his plans are, and we can all start becoming more familiar with him and following his progress. And I had a nice long conversation with him, and I'll get into that here in just a minute. But yes, I think we're going to see a little bit more of that. Number 14, retail strategies update. I'll just give you basically what we experienced the other day. We had a meeting. We had a Zoom meeting a few weeks ago, several weeks ago. And that meeting was with the team that has been designated to handle Hartsville, Trousdale County from retail strategies. There's 3 members. There were several people, Mr. Jewell, the mayor, several people that had attended the Zoom meeting. And basically what they were doing is getting our input on our wants, our needs, our wish list for the future, so they can hopefully help us fulfill that as they endeavor to bring new business into our community. It was a very helpful meeting. They were remote, so they were using Google Street View to look at some of the properties, but since Google does not update every single year, there was a lot of things that had changed. So they actually came to town this week. They were supposed to come last week, but it was the day we were all in snow and ice. They couldn't come up from Birmingham. So they came up this week, I think on Tuesday, I think was the day. And we had a long meeting. It was from 10:30 to 4. Very productive, very helpful, I thought. They listened to everyone in the room who attended. What do you want? What do you need? What are you hoping for? What would you like to see the future vision for our community be? Some of the folks in this room were at that meeting, and I think they probably agree that it was a very interactive meeting. We gave them a little bit of history of the town and a lot of things that you just can't read on the internet. You can't see on Google Earth. Then we physically walked the downtown area, all the side streets and alleys and buildings, and the mayor gave them a lot of history on each building, its current status. He's done extensive work at compiling an inventory list of properties that are available now, that are potentially available in the future. So I think we had a very good day. Basically what we've done is given them the information to build off of as they start to build their model, their economic model, and they have to build a very comprehensive and very focused data package that at that point they can start submitting to retail businesses in hopes to bring them in. And that data package will tell them who is going to be best suited for this particular site that may be available or that is available. They can look at that building and say, okay, this particular company would love to be there. That's right in their parameters, but these companies would never think about it. So they're not going to waste everyone's time calling on companies they know good well wouldn't fit their business model. Mayor, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, they were actually kind of impressed. There were some more buildings that have been renovated since they looked at them in Google Street View, so they were happy to see that. And there's been a couple of properties that have changed ownership. I've updated them on that, so they were really happy to hear about that. The Knutson's property, the building over here, they were very excited to see it. It had been renovated. I thought that was a really good space. So they were impressed with what they saw. They really liked the streetscape and some of the things we told them we're going to be working on in the future. They really like that. And there's some programs that we've looked into that they've had experience in other communities. They can give us advice on how to structure that here, or best practices going forward on that. And so I really look forward to their report or study or presentation they're going to do here. And I think it's 3 or 4 weeks. So I'll be really excited to see that. And then they're also have been in contact with our Tennessee Downtowns Committee and ECD staff in that program. They have experience in that, so I've started including them and all that, so they're really excited to see that program go forward. And think we're making headway in a lot of good direction. They actually tell us we're actually a little bit ahead of what some other communities normally are, so they're really happy for that. Again, I'm glad we retained them. I think they're gonna really help us out in a lot of different areas, not just retail recruiting, but downtown revitalization as we go forward.
I'm very excited as well. Mr. Joel, did I miss anything for that
No,
meeting? Would you like to-
Covered that very well. You know, I'm excited about the possibilities, I'll say that. I think all of us that have worked for years, like myself, are more than excited, I think, to see something begin to happen.
I think that we were very fortunate to have the support from people like Chairman Jewell.
It will be very enlightening.
The mayor having support at these levels, the mayor and chairman of the county commission and the community leaders, I think is just essential. And it seems, I'm very excited about it. And, there seems to be a lot of energy behind it. I think, if I understand correctly, part of the process is Retail Strategies is going to actually reach out and physically try to contact all of these property owners and try to talk to them about the potential of whether they would be interested in selling or leasing if they brought them a viable customer, a viable person that might be interested. So I think they're going to start reaching out to these places. I drive through here every single day, but walking is a little different. We saw about 5 properties that were for sale or lease and ready to move into right then. So you think that there's no place to lease in downtown Hartsville, but there actually is. You just got to get out of the car. Now, whether they're the correct fit for every business, no, but somebody might want to be in there. All we got to do is get 1 or 2 going, and it'll start a roll. So I think we had a very good, productive, and we're seeing a lot of activity. We're early in the process, but we're seeing a lot of activity at Retail Strategy. So far, I'm pleased with their energy. That's coming close to the end of the agenda, so we're at number 15 now, where we have other business. I'm going to introduce one of our new citizens here in a moment. Is there any other board members that have any other business they'd like to bring up or discuss? Mr. Jordan?
One little thing, your minutes should reflect who submitted on the road. Always put on there, submitted by.
Very good. Thank you. I would like to introduce Mr. Robert Ward. We had a nice long conversation the other day. Mr. Ward is going to, he is head first into trying to bring a new business to Hartsville. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that. Mr. Ward?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. King, for inviting me. I did bring my wife with me, so I do have a little history down here in Hartsville from Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. I used to be the unit commissioner for the Scouts down here. But yeah, we recently bought the house up here next to the administration building, and in our travels up here, I noticed that the hardware store had closed. And you got me thinking, this community needs a hardware store. So I've started talks with Ace and also Judge Limble about buying the Frederick. And so I'm still in the early stages, but I feel this community really could use it. I know I would use it, definitely, but I feel strong about Hartsville, and since we've moved here, the generosity and kindness that we've received since we've been here, I feel like we're home. So that's my intention is to bring a viable brand name to Hartsville that's gonna help this community flourish.
I know we have some construction professionals in here. We have legal professionals in here. We have everybody is going to be happy about that, I believe. So I don't think you'll have anybody argue that point. I think everybody would be happy to have a Ace Hardware or a home improvement store here of some sort.
One thing I've been talking to my Ace rep about is some lumber sales too, which is, you have to go where Lowe's in Gallatin or Lebanon or you know, if you need a hardware, I mean, you gotta drive at least 30 minutes away. And like I said, my house being right up here too, I don't have to drive 30, 45 minutes to go get go get whatever I need. So I'd rather be hometown. And I feel like we're gonna be here a long, long time. And I'd like to make a stand here in Hartsville with y'all.
Well, I want to welcome you to our community, even though you're not brand new, you're back. But welcome to our community, you and your wife. Thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate your attending our meeting, as we do everybody that's in the gallery. We appreciate you coming. We don't get a lot of attendance, so we like it when people come. And I want to extend our hand to you if you need help, advice, or guidance in any way, and we can help you. We want and we need you to succeed, so for our community. So please feel free to reach out. I'm quite sure that everybody in this room and many others in this community that are not here would be more than happy to help you if they can.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Well, if there's no other business on the agenda, it's our moment for public comment. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to make a comment publicly? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Graves, motion to adjourn. I don't think we need a second. It's all here. It's all right. Thank you.